Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
You know, there's some shows that I do that just lend themselves to a lot of humor. And this is one that definitely does. There could be so many tongue-in-cheek comments during the show. I'm hoping that I won't run crazy with all these little comments and what have you because of what we're talking about today. That is the derriere, the backside of your body, the junk in the trunk. We're talking about the butt. We're talking about working the butt. This is Garrett Williamson. You're listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. And today we're covering the largest muscle, the strongest muscle in the body, and one that is extremely important for a variety of reasons. Like I've said before, vanity is my favorite sin. This particular area of the body is one of those areas that I know, especially you ladies, I know that this is of great concern. So today it's all about the butt. We are talking about the butt and what makes it up. What are the different muscles involved? How do I get it toned? How do I work it? And why is it important? I'm going to give you some health reasons in there too. I know we're all about the vanity, but I'm actually going to give you some great health reasons and reasons to maintain your butt. Okay, what is the butt? Why do I say it's the strongest muscle in the body? In most cases, and in pretty much all cases, it is the biggest muscle in the body. So the butt is made up of the gluteal group. So we start off with the gluteus maximus, which is the largest part of the part that really gives it its shape, like two humpback whales. And then you've got gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus. Now, the gluteus maximus, that part of your body, its main job is to stand you up. Let's say you're trying to step up on something. You're trying to step up on something, especially anything where your knee goes up past your hip and you're trying to step up on something really high. That is nothing but that gluteus maximus. That's what does that. When you're climbing stairs, that knee is bent and you're pressing through, especially when you're pressing through your heel. That's the gluteus maximus. It happens to be the muscle that, especially if you're doing it correctly, that stands you up out of a chair. Very important muscle. I'll get to the importance of these muscles in just a few minutes, but that's the gluteus maximus. The medius is the one on the side. It's kind of on the side part of your rear end, and it helps kind of push that leg out to the side a little bit. And the degeneration of the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, degeneration of those two muscles, along with the gluteus maximus, are the main reason why we have hip fractures. I'll tell you why that is in a minute. Gluteus minimus is a little bit smaller, a little bit lower. Don't worry too much about it. It actually rotates inward from the center, where the gluteus medius actually rotates the hip outwards from the center. So not too deep into what all those muscles do, but that's your gluteal group. Gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, gluteus minimus. Why do I say they are so important? Why do I say they protect your hip? And actually, I will tell you that the gluteus maximus can save your life. Well, you've heard me talk about this in several shows. You've heard me talk about this in the live aging. We attribute muscle degeneration to time passing on a calendar. And if you've heard my shows, especially on the series I did on the live aging, I want to point that out because that's probably the most important series I've ever done. It's a 5-part series. Episodes 12 through 16 are the 5 parts of the live aging and the ridiculous concept that we degenerate because time passes on the calendar is a lie. That is a lie. And you know I love saying this. If you believe that, you're lying to yourself. If somebody has told you that and they're lying to you, if they're a health professional and they're telling you that, they're a liar. I'll make it very clear. You don't degenerate because time passes on the calendar. And the gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, the whole gluteal group is a great example of that. That muscle seems to degenerate as time passes on the calendar. Why? Well, it degenerates for a few different reasons. One of the reasons it degenerates, like any muscle, is we don't take in as much protein as we used to. We don't take in protein every meal every day. Therefore, we don't maintain the muscle. The other thing is we don't really engage that muscle very often. We stand up wrong. We stand up out of a chair. You watch a group of people go to stand up out of a chair. Typically, you'll see one thing. Just before they stand up, they'll pull their feet backwards. When they do that, they're trying to use their quadriceps, the muscles on top of the thigh, to do that standing motion. When you use another muscle to do it, then the gluteus maximus gets no work, and therefore it starts to deteriorate. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. Well, what happens? Well, what happens is you end up with the situation you typically see in men. You typically see, you see this in men. It happens in women. You don't notice it as often because women typically carry their fat more in their hips, and so the rear ends can look bigger, though they're not very strong. In men, we carry the majority of our fat around our stomach and not so much in our rear end. And so that's why a lot of elderly gentlemen look like, and I, with all due respect to Jeff Foxworthy, they look like you took a frog, stood him up, and put a pair of double knit slacks on them. They have the condition known as no butt at all. That's a scientific word. It means no rear end whatsoever. The old no butt at all. It looks like they've actually just lost their rear end. And the reason being is, again, standing up wrong, not engaging that muscle, lack of protein. You can end up no rear end. Also, I've talked about this before in, again, Live Aging, episodes 12 through 16. Make sure you don't miss those. But I've talked about the fact that we don't move sideways. We stop at an early age. We stop doing lateral movement. What happens is we stop firing that gluteus medius. We also stop firing the gluteus minimus. So those parts of the gluteal, the butt muscles, actually get weak. They deteriorate. Now, why is that so important? We lose the gluteus maximus. We lose the gluteus medius. We got no rear end. So what, Garrett? What's that mean? Well, that means all your protection around your hip is gone. Why is that important? Well, think about it. Your muscles around the bone to protect the bone. That's the bone's like first line of defense, is the muscle around it. So if you get a bump or something around a bone and you've got all this muscle around it, well, you're going to protect that bone from that hit. But if you don't have the muscle around it, well, that bone is going to take all that impact. This is the reason why we fall at 18 and we get a bruise, but we fall at 81 and we break and you know what you just thought. You said it to yourself. We break a hip. That's the reason we have hip fractures as time passes on the calendar. It's not because time passes on the calendar. It's because we stop engaging that whole gluteal group, that whole butt, and therefore we don't protect the hips. And as I've said many, many times, I'll say it many more times from now on, because I want to make sure everybody understands this, that with the first hip fracture, your incidence of mortality, your incidence of dying jump by 2/3. That's substantial with the first hip fracture. So that's why I say this muscle group, this butt, is so important. It's such an important muscle. Well, but we're not here for health reasons, right? I mean, like I've said many times before, vanity is my favorite sin. So what does it do as far as vanity is concerned? Well, nicely shaped derriere. Well, I don't think I need to get too deep into that one. Well, oh man, did I just say that? Obviously, that was not a pun intended, I promise you.
Luther Campbell from Two Live Crew just called and said you're getting a little out of hand and you need to calm down. Carry on.
I started off the podcast talking about that. I really didn't even mean that one. I can't believe that. So anyway, totally lost my train of thought now. Easy to do. Anyway, the fact that vanity is my favorite.
Kim Kardashian just followed us on Instagram, though.
that's great.
Good. That's good.
Wonderful. That's fan. I can't do that with a champagne glass, with a champagne bottle. Anyway, maintaining a nice derriere. I'm sure that everybody understands how important that is as far as vanity is concerned. But the other reason that's important as far as vanity is how much fat it burns. Now, keeping a strong gluteal muscle burns a lot of fat. It burns a lot of calories. Think about this. I've talked about this in episode 8 in the muscles. When I talked about muscle maintenance, just maintaining muscle raises your metabolic rate. It raises the amount of calories you burn just sitting still. So maintaining a strong rear end will burn calories. And so making sure that you're working that entire gluteal group, gluteus medius also, especially the gluteus maximus, then you're going to burn more calories. You're actually going to get rid of that stubborn belly fat, as I like to say, by doing so. So how do you do that? How do we maintain that derriere? What works best for my butt? Well, one thing is something very simple. Just stand up and walk around. Getting up out of a chair by placing your feet in front of you a little bit, leaning over your feet and standing up. Just that motion works the glutes. And getting up and walking around, what actually helps keep you upright, even though you don't feel it a whole lot, what actually helps keep you upright is your rear end. Something simple as getting up and moving around will help maintain your rear end. You can actually tone while you're walking. There's a way to do this. With each step, when one leg extends behind you, keep your heel on the ground as long as possible. And when you do lift your heel, roll through the foot, then push off with your toes. believe it or not, if you do that, if you roll through that heel and push through your toes, you'll actually feel your glutes contract with each step. And you've got people that actually will clench their rear end when they're walking. That works also. That's an isometric type of exercise. But simple walking like that can work your rear end. And if it comes to exercise, like I was starting to say a minute ago, you want to focus on that muscle. The more you focus on a muscle, you actually know how to flex a muscle. The more you're actually looking at the muscle, the better your workout's going to be. So when you go to work out, and I promise you, I don't have all the men recommending that I say this, but you don't want to wear something that covers up your rear end. that sounds extremely possibly sexist, but I don't mean it that way. You want to focus on that muscle. You want to be aware of it. If you're aware of it, you're going to work it more. That's for sure. Now, simple exercises. The most important exercise, I did a whole podcast on this. The most important exercise that you'll ever do, episode 21, talked about the squat. Simply being able to stand up. The most important exercise. And no matter what, you need to be doing some sort of squat. And you need to be doing it correctly. Make sure that you've got a trainer that really knows what they're doing to show you the correct way to execute a squat. Now, when I say squat, I mean the act of standing up. It doesn't necessarily have to be with weights. I do recommend that. I do recommend doing squats with weights, but it doesn't necessarily have to be with weights. But it does need to be a deep enough, low enough repetition to engage the gluteal muscle. You hear that quite often. You hear it said that you shouldn't go past 90 degrees. And people think that's 90 degrees in the knee. Actually, it's not. They're talking about 90 degrees in the hip. But if you look at some cultures, their bathrooms are on the ground. And they actually squat all the way down to where they can't squat anymore. Their rear end's touching their heels. Well, believe it or not, the human body's made to do that. A lot of people think that's bad for your knee. It's not. Unless you've got some knee damage of some sort, that particular motion is really not bad for your knees, especially if you know how to do it correctly. And being able to execute that motion, it'll help you live longer. So knowing how to squat correctly using your gluteal muscles, making sure your knees aren't going over your toes, not putting pressure on your knees, extremely important.
So you're basically telling us twerking is good for you.
Fantastic. And I'm a fan. I promise you, it's strictly for health reasons.
So twerking classes start at 7 Saturday morning, right here.
Yes. Exactly. So we do privates. That's Never mind. Wait. Okay. I'm, of course, going to advise that you use weights when you're doing some of these exercises. It's not just body weight, because, of course, you want to increase the intensity with what you're doing the exercise, and weights pretty well do. I've got some notes on that, but I tell you what, I'm gonna stay away from that, because slight incremental weights may worry people. Okay, well, if you're not going to increase the weights, increase the time. Use what I call the 30-second rule. Instead of rushing through a squat or a lunge, hold it. Hold it for 30 seconds at the lowest point. Like we're doing a squat when you're down in that deep knee bend, hold it. Hold it for 10, 20, 30 seconds. And then stand back up. You can probably reduce the amount of repetitions you do by doing that simple isometric hold. But you're firing the muscle. You're actually working the muscle harder. It's more intense. And you can do it without adding weight. You can actually increase the intensity with what you're doing the exercise. No matter what, you hear this all the time when you're exercising. You hear slow and controlled movements. Slow is not quite as important as controlled. When you hear people say that, you want to keep it under control. You don't want momentum to take over. And you don't want momentum to take over for two reasons. One thing, you're not working the muscle as hard, and also you can damage your joints through momentum. So you want to keep it under control. But I do advise you use the slow technique in order to get more out of the exercise, to do more work on the muscle. And by taking it slow, it's sort of like that 30-second thing I was telling you a minute ago. You're actually putting more time working on the muscle. Therefore, you are engaging it more. You are doing more damage to the muscle. In other words, tearing muscle fibers so they repair stronger. You're getting more out of the exercise just by taking it a little bit slower. And by taking it slower, you may have to lower the repetitions a little bit. That's okay. That's okay. You're getting more out of the exercise by taking it slow. Variety of different exercises that actually work the glutes. Well, of course, I brought up the squat. Also, lunges. I'm a fan of lunges. And remember, when you're conducting lunges, we typically believe that means going forward by doing a lunge. And a lot of times when people are thinking about that, they plant their foot, and then they push forward and push their knee over the top of their foot. Most of the time, taking the weight off the heel. You don't want to do that. You want to step forward, stop. Then do what a client of mine calls lunges drops from the center. And the reason she calls that, it's a way for her to remind, once she's placed her foot in front of her, don't go forward anymore, drop straight down. Bend the knee and drop straight down. even safer way of doing that and protecting your knees if you're worried about hurting your knees in a lunge. And trust me, doing lunges the correct way is not harmful to your knees. Doing them incorrect way is harmful to your knees. And the way to keep it protected, instead of doing forward lunges or stepping forward, step backwards. Stepping backwards, you're stepping away from the front leg. You have more of a tendency to bend the knee correctly by stepping backwards than you do when you actually step forward. So another good way to do lunges, stepping backwards. Doing one of my favorites, which is step-ups. I realized back in 1997, 98, when I really started doing, really got heavy into training, I realized early on that if I could make a lady's derriere sore through exercise, that I would...
Luther Campbell's back on the phone.
Here we go. I'm getting myself in all kinds of trouble. So, but anyway, through exercise, through lunges or whatever, if they came in, I had the greatest compliment. I'll never forget this. In a small facility, Lord, it wasn't even 2,000 square feet, but I was across the room and I was working with a client, and this is back when I was training, 20 to 22 sessions a day. And I was across the room and I'm just kind of intimately in this conversation with this client. We're wrapped up talking about something, and somebody from across the facility behind me yells, "My butt hurts." I'll never forget it. It scared me to death. I had no... Totally surprised. I didn't even know somebody had walked in the building. And they screamed that from across the way. And it was a female client that I'd worked with 2 days prior. We had done lunges and we'd done step-ups. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And the first time she'd ever done step-ups, and her rear end was incredibly sore. I knew that she was complaining happily because that's what she was hoping to get is a stronger rear end and a more shapely rear end. And I was successful in making it sore. I knew I'd really reached the pinnacle of what I was after. But step-ups, taking a step. That's the reason that step aerobics became so popular, is that, and Stairmasters became so popular, because I'll never forget the first time I ever saw a Stairmaster. It wasn't a Stairmaster brand. It was actually a Life Step by Life Fitness. And I'll never forget the rather attractive fitness attendant that was working in the fitness facility where wanted me to come back and do this workout with her because she kept saying to me, "That's a butt machine." Well, that's where step aerobics and Stairmasters became so popular, because they are bending the knee and actually firing that glute muscle. Stairmaster gauntlets the same way. Well, that's nothing more different than what I call step-ups. The plyometric boxes that you see in gyms where they place those at 12, 14, 18, 16, 24-inch boxes. You place a foot on it, and you just simply lean forward and step up on the box. That is firing that gluteal muscle. Another fantastic exercise there. Deadlifts, believe it or not, Olympic lifting, you may know, went through all kinds of different maturations where it was very popular back in the 60s. Then people started doing it wrong, so doctors started telling people not to do it because it was quote-unquote bad for you. No, Olympic lifting is fantastic, and done correctly is some of the best functional training you could ever do. And deadlifts is one of them. It's a great way to work the hamstring and the glute group, again, if done properly. If you want a correct way to do that, we have some USAW certified instructors here. Of course, every instructor at Personal Edge has a degree in the field: exercise science, exercise physiology, kinesiology, sport medicine, or athletic training. So they're well trained. But on top of that, I've got some guys that have had USAW weightlifting training. They've gone through extensive training on how to conduct and how to teach the Olympic lifts. And give us a call. We'd be more than glad to take you through some of those. But because you don't want to avoid them. Deadlifts are fantastic. Something that has made it into the Pilates world, into more of the yoga world, into the what I call less invasive exercises. Nothing against those exercises. They're fantastic, but they're less intimidating for a lot of people to get involved in. And that's bridges and hip thrust. Anytime you're lying on your back and you're pushing through your heels and your hips are coming up, that's a hip thrust, or what they call a bridge. And that is actually that's a glute exercise. That's a gluteal exercise. Anytime you're pushing through those heels. It's a fantastic one to do. If you don't want to do them just body weight's good. You can do them body weight and do them one-legged. Actually put one leg up in the air and push through the heel of the other foot, pressing it up and down. You can also place both heels on the floor and put a weight across your legs, across the top of your thighs, and press up against that resistance. And you're doing gluteal or hip work that same way, that same bridge. People do this on a bench underneath the Smith machine. Place the barbell across it on a Smith machine, so therefore the bar is under control. You're not worried about it rolling off your legs. And do simple hip thrusts that way. Fantastic glute exercise. Also, kickbacks. They make machines for this. I'm not a huge fan of them because they're actually good machines. I shouldn't say that, but they lend themselves to a larger possibility of doing incorrect form. Now, the machines aren't built that way. It's just in placing yourself in this exercise, if you're not doing it correct, you can hurt your back. I'll make it very clear, I'm not saying that a kickback machine hurts your back, but done incorrectly, it can. Something as simple as being on all fours, like a dog, hands and knees, and then kicking your heel behind you up in the air, like you're trying to kick your heel over the top of your head. That actually fires the glute muscles, works that glute. And they make exercise machines that you're actually in that position and you're kicking a bar, which is attached to the weights and causes the resistance. Those are called kickbacks. Fantastic. Another fantastic exercise. I like the tried and true. I like the natural ones, the squats, the standing up, the lunges, those kind of things. I'm typically a fan of those. But some of these machines, a good leg press machine, again, great way to work the glutes. The one thing I'll tell you, though, as far as glutes are concerned, there's a myth that is developed in thinking about glutes, and that is that, well, my father had a flat rear end, my mom had no rear end, therefore I'm not going to have a rear end. There's no truth to that whatsoever. Absolutely no. Your genes do, don't get me wrong, your genes do play a role in it. I've talked about that as far as aging is concerned. Genes are one thing as far as that dictates aging, quote unquote. It's a small predictor of it. You can pick your nose, but you can't pick your parents. I'm telling you, it is a small portion of your development, especially muscular development. You've got that muscle. It's there. You can work it. You can change it. So stop blaming your genes for your fat or flat butt. And if it's a large rear end that you're concerned about, have your body fat measured and check the millimeter measurements. Where's the largest millimeter measurement? If it's in your rear end, then most likely you are destined to carry the majority of your fat there. Does it mean that you can't make it smaller? Does it mean that you can't get rid of the fat in that area? But I've had folks stop doing leg type exercises because that my butt's big enough already. I don't need to make it bigger. I promise you what you're looking at is not muscle. You're not looking at muscle, you're looking at fat. And if you maintain and strengthen that muscle, it is, again, your biggest fat burner. So it's going to help you make it even smaller, and that's what you want to do. And everything we talk about when we talk about developing muscle or fitness in general, especially a healthy lifestyle, maintaining that nutrition is extremely important, especially drinking plenty of water. Folks, you can't get through a single podcast without me mentioning it. Every time I take a sip, I want you taking a sip. I want everybody taking in at least 100 ounces a day. 70% of Americans don't drink, 70% of the world, for that matter, adults, don't drink enough water. It is the magic pill. It'll do amazing things for you. I want to make sure that you've got a water bottle with you all times. But observing proper nutrition and feeding your muscles, water, protein, maintain your calorie level, that makes a huge difference in gluteal development. It makes a huge difference in any muscular development, but especially in the glutes, since it is such a big muscle. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast all about the butt, and I got through it without too many jokes. I got a pun in there. I certainly didn't mean to, and the phone lines have been going crazy because of that. But it's one of the most important muscles. It houses the most important exercise you'll do. You maintain that squat, you maintain your legs, you maintain your life. Please stay tuned for future podcasts on other body parts besides just the butt. But I appreciate you joining us today. If you did like it, please like and share it, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the Personal Edge Fitness podcasts, the way we help you maintain your level of wellness. Good day, everybody.
The preceding episode has been brought to you by Apple Bottom Jeans. Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.